Good evening. Can everybody hear me with this mic? Okay. Welcome to the June 12th, 2025 meeting of San Diego Community Power Committee Advisory Committee. My name is Lawrence Emerson, and I represent the City of National City. And in the absence of our chair, Vasilakis, as vice chair, I welcome members of the public, San Diego Community Power staff, and committee members joining us in person and online today. And I'm going to be turning a spry 72 in July. So I'm not as spry as our normal chair. So if I tumble or get lost, please help me out. But we want to thank Community Power staff for making this in-person meeting possible, and the Port of San Diego for accommodating us today at this facility. I will now call the meeting to order. Our meeting assistant clerk of the board, Sandra Vences, will now call the roll.
Thank you. Committee member Sclafani, committee member Johns.
Present.
Committee member Hammond.
Present.
Committee member Sandoval. Committee member Hoyt.
Present.
Committee member Anderson.
Anderson present.
Committee member Harris.
Present.
Committee member Sumner.
Present.
Committee member Montero Adams. Committee member Pike.
Present.
Secretary Castañeda. Vice Chair Emerson.
Here.
Chair Vasilakis. We have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
I have a quorum, and I want to thank all the members who've served their terms and the new and the ones who've been here a while. And I just heard, and I don't know if that's hidden in here in the agenda, but John was here from the very beginning of this committee, and he's going to be retiring or moving on after June. So I really want to thank people who have been here since the beginning, and for the new members, there's a lot of benefits from the input you have provided. So Gary, thank you for your time, and we'll carry on. But you have one more chance to provide your input tonight. Okay, I'd like to lead everybody in the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic that stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No kings. I did a little research. Normally we talk a little bit about the Kumeyaay Nation. I did a little research. The first inhabitants around the lower San Diego Bay were ancestors of the Kumeyaay people that were encountered by the Spanish in 1769. And this prehistoric sites of San Dieguito culture around the county are more than 10,000 years old. And the river basins and terraces of the South Bay were a common location for Native American camps. And a coastal survey of the map in 1857 showed that early Spanish and Anglo names for some of the rivers. The La Paleta Valley was formed by Chollas Creek, which we know as Chollas Creek now, and the Valley of La Veranda by Paradise Creek, which is in National City, where I live. The name Sweetwater came from the stories told by the Kumeyaay of the river that flowed 70 miles from Cuyamacas to the bay. And Sweetwater River currently passes through National City today and provides some of the water for the Sweetwater Reservoir. So I just wanted to throw in a little bit of a variation to our presentation, and thanks to the Kumeyaay for their history, and we'll proceed. Okay, we have a quorum. Are there any special presentations tonight? Or we're going to give a warm rep. Is Sarah here in the room over there? Okay, Sarah Gosa, I welcome you as a new staff.
Thank you.
And I'd like to hear what's your position and a little bit about your background and
My name is Sara Zaragoza. I am from Chula Vista. Currently reside in National City, actually. Love it there. I'm the executive assistant. I have over 15 years of experience supporting executives at private universities such as USD, UCSD, and now here at San Diego Community Power. And I'm so excited to be joining this wonderful team.
You're going to be assisting everybody or is
Yeah. No, the legal counsel. of
legal counsel? Oh, I see.
the directors.
Okay. Okay, well, we welcome you and
Thank you.
I think that's it for the special presentations. Are there any agenda items to be withdrawn or reordered? I think there is one. Right?
Kara has her hand up. Kara has her hand up.
On the internet.
Chair, I was just
Hammond.
gonna recommend moving up item 9 for the election to the top of the agenda or towards the beginning.
So she'd like to, once we, she'd like to reorder and move the 9th item before the 7th item when we start going through the items. And is there a motion, a second? From the members?
I so move. Second.
Second. So we have a motion and a second. Do we need to vote on that?
Sweet.
Yes. So
I just had a question. You said 7th, is that I hadn't said 7, but it's okay if
there's
that's
item 7 and you want to bring 9 up before item 7.
okay.
After, I think we're gonna do the consent items first, and then we're gonna go to the regular items.
Okay, thank you.
Committee member Johns,
Aye.
committee member Hammond,
Aye.
committee member Hoyt,
Aye.
committee member Anderson,
Aye.
committee member Harris,
Aye.
committee member Sumner,
Aye.
committee member Pike,
Aye.
vice chair Emerson,
Aye.
motion carries.
Okay, here it looks like we're looking for if there are any public comments on the consent items.
There are none, Mr. Chair.
There are none. Okay. Then is there a motion? Do we need a motion to vote on those?
Yes, we do.
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Have a motion and a second?
I'll second.
Have to take public comment.
Okay, thank you.
There were no public comment on consent items. No public.
You said there were no public comments, right? No. So let's vote on that.
Yeah, who did second? Who was the second?
Well, a couple of us was a tie.
Anderson? Okay. Committee member Johns,
Aye.
committee member Hoyt, committee member Anderson,
Aye.
committee member Harris, committee member Sumner,
Aye.
committee member Pike,
Aye.
committee, vice chair Emerson.
Aye. And was I supposed to list these agenda items
Not necessarily.
necessarily?
Motion carries.
Motion carried. Okay.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on, I believe, to then move to item 9 and start with that. Yep. So and that item is for the election of new officers, I believe. I have to find out where that is. There we go.
It's on the screen.
What's on the screen? That helps out.
We provided the presentation.
Okay, we're going to go for the election of chair, vice chair, and secretary for the next fiscal year, July 25th to 26th. And do we have, let's see, do we have some volunteers or some?
Actually have a presentation right before we go into.
Okay, oh, I see. Okay,
Good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. My name is Yomaris Crespo, Senior Community Engagement Manager here at Community Power, and I will be providing you with an overview of the general responsibilities of each officer role, as well as a reminder of the process through which they may be elected just before you begin your discussion. So
Among its duties, the chair of the CAC will serve as the primary liaison and spokesperson for the CAC with community power staff and the board of directors. They will also support community power staff with setting the CAC agenda, guide the CAC in developing its annual work plan, determine if meetings are required or if a meeting should be canceled, lead and manage CAC meetings to ensure all CAC members and community members are heard, work to keep meetings to the allotted time and manage public comments, represent the CAC at the board of directors to provide updates, submit information or respond to board requests, and represent the CAC to other organizations or at events as appropriate. The vice chair of the CAC will assume CAC chair responsibilities in the event that the chair is absent from a meeting or otherwise unable to perform their duties. And lastly, the secretary of the CAC will take attendance and meeting notes and work with community power staff to distribute relevant information to members. In terms of process, officers may be nominated or self-nominated and elected by a simple majority vote of the CAC. Each nomination requires a second. If there is only one nominee for a position, the CAC members will vote yes or no to elect the nominee. Now, if there is more than one nominee for a position, the CAC will cast their votes by name until a nominee receives a majority vote. A member does not need to be present during elections to be considered an elected, but the nominating member must ensure that the nominee has consented to be nominated and that they would serve if elected. The terms will be for 1 year, one-year term, or until a successor is elected, with the option for officers to be re-elected for up to 3 one-year terms. Lastly, I'd like to note that our current chair, Matthew Vasilakis, has expressed that he would not like to be considered for a third term, formally stepping down from chair duties via this election process. He has also provided public comment, which you have been given. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Okay, well, I'm going to be asking for nominations or volunteers. And I would like to give Gary Jones a.
Chair, there's no public comment on the side.
Oh,
Aaron,
we need, okay, thank you for that.
oh,
So proceed. I think Gary has a suggestion for a nominee and I'll let him proceed.
For chair, I regret that I won't be here to enjoy this person's great leadership that I expect. It's somebody that was at every community power public outreach event that I was at, so he must have been at a lot of the others besides. He was chair of several of our ad hoc subcommittees, and he also served as vice chair and demonstrated his ability at running our meetings. So I think he is so qualified. I am very pleased to nominate David Harris.
Second.
Oh,
Try again.
Thank you. Yes, I accept the nomination for chair.
Are there any other nominations for chair?
was that a second for Peterson?
Sure.
Anderson, excuse me. Okay, we're gonna take the roll call. Committee member Johns,
Yes.
committee member Hammond,
Aye.
committee members Hoyt, committee member Anderson,
Aye.
committee member Harris,
Aye.
committee member Sumner,
Aye.
committee member Pike,
aye.
vice chair Emerson.
Yes, David Harris is always very eloquent and speaks well, and I think he'll be a good chair leader. Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, we look forward to your term as chair.
Congratulations.
And now we're
Thank
going to, I have been the vice chair. I had originally offered to do this for 1 year. So is there any nomination for vice chair? David?
I'd like to nominate Luis Alejandro Montero Adams. He's not here at the meeting tonight, but I did speak with him, and I think he would be an excellent vice chair for this commission. He has a lot of background in policy work, and he's a fast learner on energy issues, and I just think he would make an excellent second chair, vice chair.
Second nomination.
Any other nominations? Any
I
other?
have a question because on this, maybe I'm looking at an old roster, but it says his term ends in 2025.
Would be the first term. Yes, the second term. I don't have.
He already has a second term lined up.
Should he choose to? Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? We're gonna have to hear from Lewis when he comes in. So I guess we'll proceed with the vote if there's no other nominations.
Committee member Hoyt, you motioned it, and then who seconded?
Was there Harry?
Harris motion.
Yes, oh, you-
Harris motion.
Thank you. Committee member Johns,
I,
committee member Hammond,
Aye.
committee member Hoyt, committee member Anderson,
Aye.
committee member Harris,
Aye.
committee member Sumner,
Aye.
committee member Pike,
Aye.
vice chair Emerson,
Aye.
motion carries.
Carried. Now for the most challenging positions, secretary. Is there any nomination for secretary?
I would like to nominate Mr. Pike for secretary.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I second.
Mr. Pike, you're new, but you're honored to be nominated as secretary. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, I think.
You can get a lot of help from CO here. And I guess we'll call the vote.
Committee member Johns.
Aye.
Committee member Hammond,
Aye.
committee member Hoyt, committee member Anderson,
Aye.
committee member Harris,
Aye.
committee member Sumner,
Aye.
committee member Pike.
Aye.
Vice chair Emerson,
Aye,
motion carries.
very good. Well, congratulations to the new officers, and we do want to hear from Lewis when he comes in at the next meeting. He has anything special to say? And we'll move forward, and congratulations for the new officers. So we're gonna go, and Hammond is still here for item 7. Did she have to go?
Still online.
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
We're gonna proceed to item 7. On tariffs, taxes, tax credits, executive orders, new bill and market outlook update. And looks like we're gonna have a presentation. Andres Torres, Director of the organization, and Patrick Welch, Associate Director of the Legislative Affairs, will provide the presentation.
Thank you. And I believe Patrick Welch, Associate Director of Legislative Affairs. I believe Andrea is on the phone.
He's online already.
I am, and I'm just trying to ensure I can be on video. Apologies if I don't get that figured out, but hello, everyone.
Great. Yes, we are here to provide you with a receive and file update. Normally, the policy, the legislative and regulatory team provides the CAC with regular updates on legislative and regulatory issues, and we provide quarterly verbal updates as well. We decided, given that things are changing at the federal level, to make kind of a special presentation to give you an update on what we see happening at the federal level with respect to exactly as the title said, tariffs, tax credits, and executive orders, and what kind of implications some of those changes may have for the outlook for the energy markets. It will be a combination presentation between myself and Andrea from the Power Services team. And before I begin, just want to make one thing really clear. This is a snapshot in time. Everything is very uncertain. There are a lot of parts, as I'm sure you see in the news. And so just want to make that really clear. What we present today is most definitely not definitive of where things are going, but you'll see some directional information in there. So I'm going to start off by covering two areas of federal policy development, and then I'll turn it over to Andrea to discuss tariffs and the SDCP energy portfolio perspective. Where are we right now? Right now, I'm going to start with Congress. And what is Congress up to? Congress is currently in the middle of their budget reconciliation process, which the House passed HR 1 just late last month. And that legislation would extend a tax act from 2017. And in extending that tax act, Congress, through the reconciliation process, needs to find what are called pay-fors. They essentially need to do their best effort to balance the deficit that would be created by extending those tax cuts with reducing spending in other areas. One area they are looking at reducing spending in is clean energy tax credits. And as I said at the beginning, very fluid situation, and the final outcome is unclear at this point. Next slide, please. So just before I dive into what we think Congress is attempting to do and where we see them headed, is a little bit of background. What does current law say about clean energy tax credits? Really going to focus this on the utility scale side of things, and we'll talk a little bit about what I call consumer-facing tax credits. Current law provides utility scale projects, solar, wind, geothermal, battery storage, roughly a 30% tax credit when a project starts construction. That tax credit is actually garnered by the taxpayer. In this case, it's usually a private developer. And then us as the public entity that's not a taxpayer, when we negotiate the terms of a power purchase agreement, that tax credit can be factored into the overall price. Again, like I said, it's available for really any clean energy technology. And current law sunsets that tax credit in 2032, or when greenhouse gas emissions for the electric sector fall 25% below 2022 levels. It's not anticipated the electric sector will reach that anytime soon. So the anticipation that current law means that the actual sunset would be sometime farther out in the 2030s. So long story short is there are tax credits in law right now that reduce the price of power purchase agreements, and we would expect under current law for those tax credits to remain through sometime in the 2030s. There are also current tax incentives for consumers, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. So what does HR 1 do to these utility scale tax credits? It would make three big changes. One, it would change that startup construction standard to a placed in service standard. So right now, a taxpayer can get that tax credit when you start construction on a project. That's a fairly certain date. Placing a project into service are a lot more variables, so it's a lot of uncertainty of when that place in service would happen. It would then also say you have to place into service by December 31st, 2028. So you can see a significant shortening of that sunset date and a real tightening of it. And then lastly, it would also impose. Lastly, it would also impose a foreign entity of concern requirements. Very complex. Long story short, the language in the bill basically makes it so that any project that receives material assistance from one of 4 countries, including China, and material assistance is defined to include component parts of projects. Essentially, you couldn't get a tax credit if it has those component parts from China. You'll see why that's important when we talk about tariffs in a little bit and how much of the energy supply chain does run through China. So that's what HR 1 does to utility scale tax credit as it's written today. Next slide, please.
You're going to take questions at the end?
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Mentioned also has consumer level tax credits as well. There's 3 that I'll mention here. Right now, under current law, if you install solar storage on your home or your business, you can claim a equivalent 30% tax credit for installing that solar. That exists, I believe, through 2032. There's also a home energy efficiency and electrification tax credit. It's capped at a dollar amount, but if you install an upgraded HVAC or hot water heater, you can get a tax credit for that as well. There's also an EV tax credit for $7,500 that is available as well. This bill would sunset those effective at the end of this year if it's signed into law. Those aren't tax credits that SDCP captures through any of our procurement or energy services. But as the committee is well aware, we have a deep decarbonization goal, flex load efforts, VPP efforts, and that relies on customers installing devices in their homes. And if devices are more expensive to install in your homes, I think that probably makes it a little bit more challenging to achieve some of those goals. So really want to point out that not only does this bill propose to make changes on the utility scale side, but also on the customer as well. Next slide, please. There are two other bills just to be aware of that propose alternative solutions that are a little bit more preferable to what's in HR 1 in terms of utility scale tax credits. I'm going to focus really on one that we see as more preferable from our portfolio outlook. That's HR 3191, Certainty for Energy Future Act. It would really only ratchet down those utility scale tax credits for solar and wind, and it would still give us a 4 or 5 year window where we could capture those tax benefits. And then those tax credits would still exist for other technologies like geothermal, battery storage, and other clean energy generation technologies as well. Importantly, that legislation would maintain the start of construction standard, which I think we see as a really key part of this. And it would not have a severe foreign entity of concern restrictions as well. It's not clear if that bill will advance in the House, as they already passed a more restrictive bill in HR 1, but it certainly is kind of a marker out there in the conversation and the debate. Next slide, please. So I'm going to just wrap up the budget reconciliation and talk a little bit about an executive order, and then I'm going to hand it off to Andrea to talk about tariffs and the portfolio. So wrapping up federal budget reconciliation, as I mentioned, the House approved it by one vote on May 22nd. The bill is now with the Senate. They have created a self-imposed deadline of July 4th to try and pass HR 1 or some version thereof. We don't know what kind of amendments, if any, they will make to the bill. They may not. And again, this is a 1,000-page bill, so it's not just clean energy tax credits. There's all kinds of other stuff that's in there. This is just one portion. If the Senate decides to make some modifications to it, whether it's on the clean energy tax provisions or other provisions, they then have to send it back to the House, and the House then has to re-vote on it as well. So as I mentioned, very fluid situation. The final outcome and the timing of the outcome is unclear. We are continuing to monitor it with all the resources that we have, keep you and our board and our FRMC up to date, and remain in touch with our local congressional representatives and United States senators as well. So let me just turn to talk about an executive order that also has some relevancy to SDCP. I'll turn it over to Andrea, and then we'll open up for questions and conversation. So next slide, please. So one other thing that I wanted to mention is the president issued a series of executive orders in early on in his administration, and one has become pretty relevant for SDCP, for community power. We have a project on land in Nevada and Bureau of Land Management, a solar and storage project, and the president's executive order put a pause on permitting on BLM land. That pause has caused some delays in renewable energy permitting. We learned that that pause has been lifted. We understand that the Bureau of Land Management is starting to process environmental impact statements. So we're starting to hear good signs. But that pause did cause the board last month to have to approve a contract amendment to that project to delay its commercial operation date. And so you can actually see that tied to the kind of the tax credit conversation, right? Like there are these uncertainties of when a project is going to come online, and here is one of them. And so that's why that startup construction standard is so. Just wanted to make the committee aware of this, that there is this other outlying issue on one particular project, and again, continue to monitor it in conjunction with our colleagues in the power services. So Andrea, I'll pass it over to you to talk about tariffs and the portfolio.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. I apologize in advance for any background noise you may hear. I did not get to as quiet enough as a place as I had hoped. So bear with me. Yes, I'm Director of Origination, which is really charged with the sourcing and negotiation of our long-term contracts. And, with respect to tariffs, generally speaking, interpreting tariff policy and quantifying the direct and indirect economic impacts of tariffs is pretty complex and challenging for even those directly impacted companies to parse through. So following is really just a high-level summary and not meant to be comprehensive. So tariffs are a common policy tool and have been in effect to varying degrees over many decades. For example, the US have imposed significant tariffs on goods from China during the first Trump administration, and then continued and adjusted in Biden administration, and now in the second Trump administration. Since January of this year, the US has applied additional tariffs to nations across the globe. And these tariffs and corresponding retaliatory tariffs that the media refers to as trade wars have been extremely volatile and pose a challenge for really all industries to respond to, including the renewable energy industry. As currently, the 10% is the baseline tariff applied across all countries, with country-specific tariffs added to that. So just pointing out here that China remains a dominant supplier of raw materials utilized in solar equipment. However, fortunately, increasingly, PV supply chain has shifted to other Southeast Asian countries, including Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Cambodia, as well as South Korea, and increasingly the United States. And that was really the result of some prior tariffs implemented over time, and the industry responded over many years. Steep tariffs have also been imposed on aluminum, and steel. And just this week, the tariffs on steel increased from 25% to 50%. And that, of course, can increase the capital costs, not only for renewable energy construction, but really all across all other construction sectors as well. Next slide, please. So there have been legal challenges. On May 28th, the U.S. Court of International Trade froze the administration's sweeping tariffs on the basis that they improperly used the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. However, on the heels of that, Federal Appeals Court has since allowed the administration's most sweeping tariffs to remain in effect while they review the lower court's decision. Next slide, please. The next couple of slides highlight the recent tariff history on China and some high-level information on China's market share of the supply chain of renewable energy infrastructure to the United States. So here's a chart from the Peterson Institute for International Economics showing the volatility of tariffs over the last 3 administrations, including that most recent volatility that I referred to since January, as you can see illustrated here. Since the administration's Liberation Day on the 2nd of April, the highest tariff level imposed briefly reached 145% on April 9th. But since then, we're currently under a 90-day pause, leading to a hold on tariff rates of approximately 30%. The outcome of that pause in the trade war is very unknown and uncertain at this time. Next slide. So the next couple slides are just focusing again on China, and essentially just pointing out here that the supply of raw materials and components for battery storage has not yet diversified to the extent that PV module supply has, that I referred to earlier. So materials like graphite and cobalt, as well as BESS battery energy storage components along the supply chain are also supplied by China. So for example, even battery energy storage systems supplied by US manufacturers may include battery cells supplied by China. So you can see how this could really be complex to interpret the tariffs impacts on project and supply economics. To a lesser extent, China has also applied wind turbines, generators, and other high voltage equipment. Next slide, please. So what does this mean for our portfolio? This slide really focuses on its impact to our renewable targets that we have as an agency. Fortunately, we remain well positioned to meet our RPS interim target of 75% renewable by 2027. And we have nearly 10 years to reach our 100% renewable by 2035. Some good news is, as among our contracted projects under construction that are renewable, this really all but 2 of the utility scale projects under development have either commenced construction or have safe harbored equipment, and are currently on track to start delivering power by the end of 2028, if not before. So that means that approximately 2/3 of our renewable developing megawatt hours have mitigated much of the recent tariff and tax credit risk that Patrick described. The second bucket of projects is really those that are contracted yet not under construction. Those do remain, more at risk to either increased tariffs or the loss of tax credits. And we just have to monitor, and we are monitoring those projects closely with the counterparties to understand any impacts to contract viability. And then to the far right, with respect to our pipeline, so that means, if we issue an RFO, shortlist projects, or whether we're in the midst of negotiations at this time, wherever possible, we're prioritizing projects that are better positioned to mitigate those risks from tariff exposure. And that can be in the form of developer-specific procurement strategies or project financing strategies. But unfortunately, the impacts from the loss of tax credits are really challenging to avoid, especially for these earlier stage projects. So, and then the note at the bottom here just points out that, again, this is the focus from impacts to our renewable targets as a percentage of our load. We do have a number of battery storage standalone projects that most of those, unfortunately, are not yet under construction or, in the earlier stages of development. And so those projects, I would say, are more at risk of tariff and tax credit implications. So we'll keep the CAC informed as both the budget, the administration's budget and tariff negotiations settle down. And I'll pause there, and I imagine you may have questions for either Patrick or I on this agenda item.
Yeah, happy to take questions.
I want to thank the 2 presenters, Patrick Welch and Andrea Torres. It does sound like you're keeping your eyes and hands on what's going on, and it's very challenging. A lot of hurdles to work on and watch what's going to happen. Sandra, do we have any public comments on this
There are
item?
none, Mr.
No comments. So I guess we'll open it up for questions from the members, and Peter has a hand up.
Well, in your presentation, you answered a couple of my questions, but my intelligence from the US Senate suggests that the big, beautiful or ugly bill, however you want to characterize it, is unlikely to pass in its current form. Is that your opinion as well?
We're in touch with our National Trade Association, other stakeholders, our congressional delegation. We do have a federal consultant as well. And certainly there have been some discussions that there could be changes. I hesitate to fully agree with you, though, because there's not a lot of transparency in the process. We don't expect them to hold committee hearings, for example, and they may just amend the bill and put it right on the floor for a vote. So I think I remain concerned. I view a lot of that there is a lot of uncertainty in what the outcome might be. And today we may be hearing those things, but tomorrow we may not be.
I've heard from 4 United States senators today, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats.
Yeah.
It says in its current form, it's dead on arrival. So
Yeah, and I would note, one thing that about that is there was a group of the House of Representatives members of the majority party who sent a strongly worded letter ahead of the vote, specifically on energy tax credits, that we don't like what's being proposed, but then they ended up voting for it anyway. So I think there are some challenges that
I have one question for our online speaker. Given all of your analysis, do you think there will be an adverse impact of any of those policies on renewable energy production for San Diego Community Power?
Yes, I think the risk is definitely there, particularly if it survives as currently passed by the House. Those provisions really put renewable energy developers in a tight box that are really hard to meet. Those 2 standards there. So as Patrick mentioned, tax credits have been relied on, really since the start of the renewable energy boom, and really contributed to the success of commercializing these technologies. So we are concerned about that. However, like I said, we are fortunate. We've done a lot of work in the past 2 years to or more to really accelerate our procurement, get quite a bit of volume under contract. And thankfully, we did an audit of all of our projects. We really understood that, okay, majority of our portfolio is pretty well mitigated against these risks. They're not coming back to us and asking us for, price adjustments and relief, right? And that's really good news. I am more concerned about, those earlier stage projects, what that will mean for the availability of projects to us, and yes, potentially impacts on price. But at this point, it's really hard to say how quickly the industry can evolve and adapt. I have no doubt, it'll be here regardless of any tax credit loss. It's just a question of what that will mean for, contract terms that we'll have, and will obviously impact our strategy on that.
Thank you.
Committee member Johns.
So I'm and it's taking a longer term view. I've been very interested in other battery technologies, and in particular, the general category of flow batteries. And I realize there's nothing that's going to solve some of these issues immediately, but I'm just wondering if, the fact that, there is this tariff and supply problem, it might be an opportunity for community power to encourage some alternate battery technologies such as flow batteries. And I'm just wondering if there's any thought to the idea that, it's an economic principle that when one source becomes more expensive, there's substitutions of other sources, and that's where the opportunities will come from. I'm just wondering what your thought is on the idea of some, opportunity here.
Yeah, well, I really do appreciate that question. It's in some ways, we're pretty solar and lithium ion battery heavy in terms of our technology. And prior to these proposed changes to tax credits and tariffs, we have been eyeing and increasingly trying to focus on diversifying our portfolio. And we have wind, of course, as well. But those alternate battery technologies, we just don't see them currently coming to us in our RFOs to the extent I would really like. But yes, I agree. Sometimes, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention, or whatever the expression is. So I'm hoping that yes, it will encourage that diversification, and kind of, that's one silver lining to this, for sure.
What you say you don't see them, in other words, these alternative technology companies coming to us. Is there something we could do to sort of make it known that we're receptive to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think and that's not to say we haven't been, we are actually, myself and Morgan, Adam, who's, charged with local procurement, we worked closely together. We are seeing some proposed different battery chemistries, et cetera, coming our way. It's very sparse currently. However, we fundamentally have to make the project economics make sense for our customers. And so we're open to creativity around that. Certainly supporting doing what we can to help those emerging technologies become more commercialized. We just, especially in this rate environment, just have to be really cautious about doing that. But I would say, to the extent you do our, the CAC or your network, is connected to those efforts, like happy to, entertain those discussions and so we can get more information on that. But we do what we can to, of course, ourselves to try to reach out to known suppliers of alternate battery technologies. But yes, to your point, hopefully we'll see more of it over time.
I'd like to recognize Committee Chair Cesares from La Mesa. Did I pronounce that right?
No.
I think you had a question.
Sumner, not Caceres. Sumner, committee member Sumner.
Oh, I'm sorry. How about the old one? Okay, sorry about it. I can't read the sign from here. That's why I keep asking, make bigger signs, but
No problem.
go ahead.
Along those same lines about alternatives, what about at the state level with the budget? I know the state budget needs help as well, but what about state priorities? Is there any backfilling that can be done at the state level?
The short answer is no. The state is facing a $12 billion deficit. They have a budget deadline of actually June 15th, this Sunday. They can go as far as July 1, actually. But we are actually seeing cuts to some energy programs that the legislature and governor appear poised to. So their ability to kind of backfill is limited. And I, in my just observing the process, energy probably wouldn't be their priority, given that there are other issues related to healthcare and other social services. Probably be for this.
So would it be fair to say that this is sort of a mid to longer term problem then?
Certainly, if the tax credits are changed, I think that's a fair view. It's obviously it wouldn't just affect community power and the market here in California, a nationwide impact. So there's a lot of, I think in my estimation, a lot of unknowns to exactly how the market would impact. There is, especially in the West, a lot of the projects in the pipeline, I think around 84% in the Western Interconnect are solar, wind, and storage. So you see the market moving towards renewables. How much of that is a result of the tax credits? I think it's hard to say, but I think there would be an impact across the country.
And just maybe one other follow-up. So along that line, maybe if not through tax credits, but maybe there are other regulatory burdens that could be alleviated that might result in financial incentive to get things done. Tax credits are one way, but speed is another. Time value of money is another.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I do think the state is looking at some of those items. Two I'll just mentioned is there is a bill in the assembly that would create, and this would rely on some level of funding. So there is that outlier there, but it would create basically an expedited local government permitting process for clean energy projects. So I think the idea being, yeah, it normally takes 3 or 4 years to get a project from start of construction to place in service. Maybe if you can shorten some of that permitting, you're saving time, but also money. And then we do expect that they will attempt to reauthorize what's called the cap and trade program this year. And certainly that is an incentive in terms of ratcheting down on a cap on emissions. But also there is the California climate credit that is part of that. That is not an incentive that is directed towards developers. That is an incentive that goes on bills, but it is another methodology to kind of help alleviate some cost pressures. And I think obviously that's one of the big impacts of potentially these tax credits is the cost pressures that
Thank you for that.
Just the committee, Sean Sumner, so forgive me for my error. I was looking at an old list. And committee member Anderson has another.
One alternative to battery storage is pump storage facilities, where you essentially have two bodies of water and you pump power up at night when the rates are very cheap, and then you pump it down to shave peak demand during the day. There's a couple of those proposed in San Diego County. Are we going to take any active role in promoting those that could potentially benefit San Diego Community Power?
Look, Andrea, if you have a thought on that question.
You know, we might have to get back to you on that. I was aware, of course, of the San Vicente, project and others, but it's been a while since I've been directly involved in those conversations. So I'll have to circle back to you on that.
Any other committee members have a comment? I'll add my comments if there's, okay, committee member Harris?
Yeah, thank you for your presentations on this really critical, timely issue. I mean, I think, oh gosh, I feel very strongly that community power is, leading the way with the renewable energy here in California, along with the other CACs. And the number one issue here in the state is energy affordability. And these changes at the federal level make absolutely no sense at all, in my humble opinion. It's just hard to wrap your mind around that the federal government would try to undermine such a critical sector of the energy economy. And I know I'm just speaking to the choir perhaps here, but I just have to say this is certainly an immediate threat to our future. I mean, I am glad to hear that 75%, I'm sorry, you said 2/3 of our pipeline is already in construction or very close to starting construction. So that's the good news, but certainly everything else would certainly undermine our goals and mission and those of California. The other thing that I've heard is that Texas is actually the fastest growing solar market in the country, and the Midwest as well, with solar and wind. So this is shouldn't be a partisan issue, because the benefits of renewable energy are across the country, and the jobs as well that are being created through these renewable energy tax credits and so forth. So yeah, it's just that, along with the tariffs, which are not only volatile, but erratic, irrational, and excessive. I mean, I could go on, but I won't. But I would say if China wanted to undermine our energy economy, this would be an excellent way to carry out that, because it just attacks it from every angle, even these tax credits for consumers, which makes heat pumps affordable, along with EVs and so forth. These are being eliminated. It makes no sense at all. So I just needed to say those two words. One other comment is I listened to a podcast called Volts, VOLTS. It's hosted by David Roberts. And if you want to get more information on the issues that were covered here in this presentation, they really dig into the weeds on this podcast called Volts. So there was a recent episode that focused only on the big, beautiful bill, so this is very difficult this is a difficult challenge. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Committee member Anderson.
Yeah, I would just add that this is not happening in isolation. This is an attack on civilization, as we've known it in the United States, whether it's environmental regulation, free trade, foreign assistance. You could go on and on across the board. I talked to a former head of naval intelligence today at lunch, He equates it with Mao's Cultural Revolution in China 30 years ago.
Committee members, any other comments, or I'll add my two bits and I agree with what you were saying, Committee Member Harris. I think we should be moving forward with new technology that makes cleaner and brings the cost down for everybody. And that's what we've all been working on. I will add a comment to Committee Member John's mention of flow batteries. When I went to the convention in San Diego for energy storage, an iron flow battery was being presented. They're located in, I forget, Oregon or Washington. They're already demonstrating that in California, I believe, and others. And then also they have a project in Australia, way over there, for their energy flow battery. Another company, zinc flow batteries, is in the United States. So keep those two in mind. And yes, hopefully we can encourage them to move forward. If other costs are going to go up, maybe they can get more business and accelerate their technology for use in our energy storage. I had a question, Patrick Welch, in your presentation. Could you go over the geothermal energy? What's the effect on geothermal energy incentives or credits? Could you mention?
So for geothermal, that would be covered by the investment tax credit or the production tax credit. So those are technology neutral tax credits, but geothermal is an eligible technology. So that if HR 1 passes as it is currently written, it would have an impact on the ability of geothermal, no matter the type, the availability of the tax credit of that technology.
Would go away, you say?
Yeah, the tax credit, just like it would for wind or
everything else,
or energy storage, any availability of the ITC or the PTC to benefit a potential new geothermal well or project in California or anywhere in the United States, that would have a limitation on it as well.
If no further comments, I guess this is a receive and file item. Please continue on your monitoring and hopefully we can overcome some of these challenges in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to agenda item 8. Presentation of the draft fiscal year 2025-26 operating budget, the fiscal year 2025-26 capital budget, and the fiscal year 2026-2030 capital improvement plan. And we'll turn it over to the power staff. And who is it going to be?
So I'll kick us off and then I'll hand it off to our subject matter experts. Good afternoon. My name is Jack Clark. I'm your Chief Operating Officer here. We'll transition to a slightly lighter subject than what's happening in Washington, D.C. This year we wanted to try to present our fiscal year budget development process a little bit differently than what you've seen in the past. Our FY26 proposed budget is aimed to shape a future that is both sustainable and equitable. We wanted to provide the CAC with an in-depth look at how affordability and providing long-term value remain core to our strategy here at Community Power. Every decision we make, from purchasing power to expanding programs, is grounded in the needs of our customers and communities. I think you all see that on a day-to-day basis as you're working with us. You'll hear more about that today from our subject matter experts as we go through this. We understand fully that it is important for us as an organization, as a public agency, to think about our budget the way that our customers think about their budgets. This proposed budget reflects our priorities: stable, competitive rates, customer-centered services, expanding programs and incentives, capital investment planning, organizational enhancements that strengthen internal capacity to support service delivery, and fiscal sustainability. Every choice in this budget has been made with enormous care and consideration from the subject matter experts across our team of public servants. We have brought them in today. My apologies. They're all long-winded. That's Joe. But truly our intent here is providing the best possible value to our ratepayers. Okay, so we wanted this year to dive a little bit deeper into the details. So you'll hear about that in the coming slides. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Eric Washington.
Good evening, committee members. Director Dr. Eric Washington, Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer of San Diego Community Power. And I'll just echo many of the comments that our Chief Operating Officer mentioned a brief moment ago. The slide that's before you now is just sort of by way of background, the process from a timeline perspective, how the annual budget is developed at San Diego Community Power. It's a highly collaborative approach to establishing the budget. You'll hear from some of our subject matter experts and folks that drive budget for their respective departments. The next slide, please. So overall, our budget development process is guided by these 5 financial principles. They get prioritized in developing our budget, starting with fiscal responsibility, and that feeds into fiscal sustainability, being good stewards of the funds that are appropriated to community power for carrying out its operations, meaning that we want to make sure that we ensure we have sufficient funds to operate. You just heard from a previous presentation some of the things that we have to navigate from a regulatory perspective and things that are ahead of us. So that feeds into the need to continue to build a reserve that supports that fiscal stability so that we can respond fiscally to things that that are outside of our control, ensuring that our budget is transparent and easy to understand, and also to keep the board, the community advisory committee, staff, and the general public at large aware of what our financial condition is. And that's seen in a monthly treasurer's report, as well as our budget development process playing out in a public arena through presentations such as these, presentations at our Finance and Risk Management Committee, as well as our board. The finance department, along with individuals from every department across the organization, work again collaboratively to produce a budget that's focused on things like affordability, making sure that the needs of our customers are taken into consideration when we develop our budget, and also developing a budget that is going to sustain the organization in years and decades to come. Next slide, please. So starting off with some high-level budget highlights, we'll get into this in the presentations that follow. But fiscal responsibility is a cornerstone of what we look to in establishing our budget. Organizational sustainability, strengthening our capacity and supporting our long-term strategy and service delivery to our customers. Stable competitive rates, again, making sure that we take into consideration rate stability and rate competitiveness as we establish our rates. Programs and incentives, making sure that we have a budget that can continue to support and expand on programs, a few which you can see in this slide that are currently underway and programs that are to come. And then lastly, making sure that we can continue to advance our capital investment plan, building out infrastructure, again, making sure that we're transparent in developing those programs, executing on those programs for years to come. So the investment plan, as mentioned, covers a period out from 2026 to 2030. And with that, next slide, please. I will pass it off to Tim Manglamat, our Director of Finance at San Diego Community Power. Tim.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, CSC members. My name is Timothy Manglamat, Director of Finance at Community Power. Apologies ahead of time for the angle. I know it's a little bit weird to make eye contact right here. And I'll try to talk louder for the room. So I do want to take a quick moment just to thank staff who put a lot of hard work into this budget. A lot of them are here seated today. And the bulk of the presentation from here on out will be department presentations that kind of go into a lot more detail on the budget. The chart that you see in front of you is your standard finance eye chart for any typical budget. And I'll walk you some of the details because I think this is the first time the CAC has seen this particular chart. So starting first on the top parts of this chart are the revenue side of our budget. So the board and the CAC reviewed rates that were adopted back in the board back in February. Those same rates are essentially set for a year. And so the rates that you see in this year's budget are the rates that were set back in February. So it's a 3% discount for our power on base product, a 5% discount for our power base product. And that's what you see reflected here, kind of in our revenue. Cost of energy is our biggest cost. It's 95% of all the costs for community power. Believe it or not, that's actually gone down, which I know is a little bit counterintuitive to the presentation that you just heard. To talk through it a little bit more, so a lot of the energy for this upcoming fiscal year has already been locked in and hedged for the fiscal year. The other thing that's playing out is the current market prices have started coming down. So the renewable prices, the resource adequacy prices in the open market have gone down. A big portion of our energy is indexed, meaning we get a lot of energy from SCG and NEED through our VAMO and our MCAM contract with them. Because they've essentially bought those resources already, and it's indexed to the market, right? So when the prices go down for renewables, when the prices go down for RA, the resources that we buy for that go down, which led to a lot of that reduction that you see year over year of 160 million. The non-energy side is really the side that we have in our control, fully under our control, and you'll see a lot more detail on that here in a second from my colleagues. But that's essentially flat year over year. There's a slight $3.5 million increase from last year. Most of that has to do with a lot of positions that we hired last year and those salaries being actualized over the course of a full year. So if you imagine somebody who's hired 2 months ago, that salary now is 12 months salary. And most of that non-energy has to do with that increase. And the kind of the punchline here is this budget, with luck, should net about $164 million in net income. That means a couple of things. That one of the big things that means is we do think there's a high likelihood that we hit our 180-day cash on hand reserve target in this current fiscal year. That ebbs and flows. So energy, depending on the month, we make money, we lose money, but we do expect to hit that target. So all that said, in front of you in your packets are a full budget book and a full CIP book that goes into a lot of the details. Of what we're going to be proposing to the board here pretty shortly. You'll also see in last May, we brought the same budget book to our board. And then this upcoming June, we've had a few revisions to that budget book. So the budget book that you see in front of you has a few red lines. We've made some changes from last month to this month. There haven't been any changes to the operating side of the budget from last month to this month. But we are proposing a few changes kind of on our capital side. And most of that has to do with us just actualizing more costs on the capital side. And then kind of right-sizing what we need from a project cost perspective as more costs are coming in and we're closing out the year. Next slide, please. To go into a little bit more detail on our major cost categories. So I mentioned earlier that we do... I mentioned earlier that hasn't been much of a change on the operating side of the budget. From last year to this fiscal year, we took a really close look at our budget to make sure that we're using our funds efficiently and being good stewards of ratepayer funds. So across the major categories, we either try to save money or it's been flat year over year. The major categories where you see slight increases are going to be in the personnel and general administration categories. And again, a lot of that has to do with the increase with the staffing that we hired in the last fiscal year and those positions being actualized in this current fiscal year that we're proposing for the budget. One other notable thing there is a capital transfer. So we're proposing a $22.2 million transfer from the operating budget into our CIP. As a reminder, the CIP really is our funding mechanism for a lot of the programs that you see month in and month out. So for example, the solar battery storage program is a major program that we're proposing to fund in this year's CIP. And that's something I'll get to in a second. It's a huge portion of funding that we're hoping to propose as part of this fiscal year's budget. Next slide. So kind of transitioning to the details here. So every department here pretty shortly is going to present the details of each particular department's budget. On the finance side, in terms of what we're bringing in this fiscal year, the first thing is affordability. So one of the big things that we're trying to do in this fiscal year and continuing for the next few years are clean prepayment transactions. I think the CAC has seen presentations in the past about these, but essentially these are a mechanism that the agency can utilize to get savings for tax exempt bonds for essentially prepaying the energy that we're purchasing already. Each of these transactions can lead to billions of dollars of savings. Community Power did one of these back in November of last year, and that transaction led to $6.8 million in savings. So that's a pretty big, major priority for the finance team, because each of these transactions can lead to major savings for the budget. One of the things that we're trying to stand up this year also through this budget is our middle office risk function. So kind of related to the presentation you heard earlier from Patrick and from Andrea, there's a lot of risk and a lot of volatility kind of in the energy market. And so the finance function, we do want to stand up this middle office risk function so we can have a better understanding of those risks, how they feed into the finances, and figuring out ways that we can plan around those major risks that we see coming down the pipeline. Along those same lines, in this year's budget, the finance team is proposing 2 positions. So one of those positions is to support that middle office risk function that I just mentioned. And the second position is to support the programs department. So as the programs department continues to grow, we want to make sure there's enough support for those programs from a finance perspective to make sure that we can deliver what we need to. And the last thing they're proposing is an enterprise resource planning system. It's essentially a big planning system for the agency. We've been around since 2019, and believe it or not, most of our budgets have been done in Excel. And I think it's done a good enough job to date, but we've grown pretty significantly here. And I think it's time for us to mature into a more mature budgeting system, one that can be one clean system of record that we can use for years to come. And so that's kind of one of the big proposals that you'll see from the finance side. And with that said, I will turn it over to my next colleague who's going to present on power services. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Janine Camara, Director of Portfolio Management and part of the Power Services team. Purchasing power on behalf of community power customers is the largest piece of the budget. So we work to provide customers with clean, reliable, and competitively priced electricity. And Power Services does this through long-term, short-term energy contracting, accurate load forecasting, power resource scheduling, wholesale market participation, energy risk management, and ongoing compliance with state and regulatory mandates. Some key highlights in our budget this year include adjusting assumptions to manage risk and account as best as possible for fluctuating wholesale market prices. We'll be adding a portfolio analyst and a modeling and forecasting analyst to prudently manage our power supply position and continue advancing towards our renewable energy goals while keeping prices affordable. We're continuing to ensure cost-effective compliance with resource adequacy for RA and renewable portfolio standards, or RPS. We're currently implementing and integrating an energy trading and risk management system, and this will improve internal analytics, risk tracking, and reporting by Q3 2025, so very soon. We're getting additional Solar Advantage contracts in place that will also provide significant bill relief for nearly 10,000 income qualified families, while also shoring up grid resiliency to meet our local procurement goals. And we are maintaining a diverse power supply portfolio that helps stabilize prices and protect customers from any extreme price fluctuations. And that's Power Services. I'd like to hand it over to Jack in operations.
Thank you, Janine. All right. So the operations section, just as a reminder, covers 4 departments in particular: IT, data analytics, customer operations, legislative and regulatory affairs, customer programs, and public affairs. Over recent months, we've also added a project management. And our core functions here are really are around delivering effective and efficiently coordinated and integrated solutions across for the agency. Okay. Operations drives the implementation of the agency's strategic objectives. As I mentioned, through collaborative and coordinated efforts and really striving for operational excellence. The team oversees internal governance, agency-wide administrative systems, policy development, and is also responsible for engagement with our customers and stakeholders at all levels, including the CAC, as is here regularly. This means, in fact, that we hear from our customers on a regular basis. We work to tailor our collective efforts to meet their needs. This includes also our work to ensure transparency and accountability. The project management office, as I mentioned, which we just developed and launched a few months ago, is housed within operations, is designed to create and lead efforts to align project execution with strategic priorities, standardize workflows, create efficiencies, and improve internal delivery. Operational efficiency supports affordability by reducing redundancies and ensuring customer dollars are used as effectively as possible. We're largely holding steady on our budgets in operations, but are proposing some key investments to enhance customer education and launch programs that have been in development now for a number of years. Next slide, please. I'll cover a summary for our IT data analytics and customer operations department. Our senior director isn't available this evening. So my apologies, you had me to deal with a little bit longer. But this department serves two distinct functions that have been broken up in our budget book as both IT and data analytics as the first section, and then customer operations as the second. Both functions work together to provide reliable, data-driven tools to our internal staff and to our customers. Some of the budget highlights for this department include investments in strengthening cybersecurity, streamlining our internal IT functions to ensure that our organization remains secure and efficient. As you heard from Tim earlier, we are still implementing and developing a number of data platforms across the organization as a young public agency. We're also in the midst of launching an enterprise-wide data platform that will centralize our data and help all internal teams better collaborate to improve effective and improved service to our customers. Advanced processes across all internal departments to align agency systems, optimize internal procedures. Much of this team's work is really centralizing and coordinating the data flow across a number of teams. On the customer operations side of this department, we are aiming to resolve outstanding billing, communication issues with our friends over at the investor-owned utility. This ultimately affects customer satisfaction, as you can imagine. And we're also continuing to support and enhance our contact center in terms of training and performance monitoring for high quality service and to ensure customers know their options in terms of getting cleaner and cheaper power. This department is working closely also with public affairs as well as many other departments, but in particular with public affairs to expand marketing and outreach for some of our lowest priced power-based rates and rate options, as well as reaching out to customers to adopt our Power 100, Power 100 Green Plus products. All of our efforts are aimed at enhancing customer service and the customer experience. We are focused on providing customers with clear and more up-to-date insights about rates and information needed to understand and reduce their bills, while proactively addressing errors to ensure accurate and timely billing. We strive to continue to implement competitive and sustainable rate structures and services to meet the needs of our customers, and we are actively listening to them on a daily basis. We're also working to develop new and innovative means of communicating data to support the organization and the communities we serve, and you'll hear a little bit more about that throughout the remainder of this presentation. Now I'll hand it over to Laura Fernandez, our Senior Director of Legislative and Regulatory Affairs.
Thank you, Jack. Regulatory and Legislative Affairs Department monitors, engages, and influences proceedings, proposed policies, and legislation that directly or indirectly impact community power operations and customers. The department also supports regulatory compliance across multiple state agencies, assists agency-wide understanding of policy impacts, and develops strategies for securing external funding and favorable policy outcomes. Community Power participates in trade associations such as CalCCA and works collaboratively with member agencies, industry partners, and stakeholders across the state to ensure community choice remains a resilient and effective tool for climate action and energy equity. The department's work is guided by Community Power's board-approved regulatory and legislative platform, which outlines the agency's values-based approach to policy and advocacy, anchored in accelerating deep decarbonization, promoting local development, and stabilizing community choice energy. This year's budget highlights include maintaining staffing levels that allow Community Power to monitor or engage with over 60 regulatory proceedings and approximately 150 pieces of legislation, as well as advancing regulatory and legislative outcomes that uphold procurement programs and rate-making autonomy to help keep rates down and decision-making local. We are advocating on behalf of our customers every day to help shape the regulatory and legislative landscape in order to protect local control and promote affordability for all customers. And I will turn it over to our Senior Director of Programs, Colin Santulli.
Thank you, Laura. For the advisory committee, I'm Colin Santulli, Director of our Customer Energy Program, and I'm going to run through the highlights in the budget for next fiscal year. We'll start with the launching of the San Diego Regional Energy Network, which is a group of programs focused on energy efficiency primarily, with the goal of reducing customer bills and energy. We're also proposing to relaunch the Solar Battery Savings Program. We've done this pilot last year, very successful, and in this budget, we're proposing to double the investment into the program, which incentivizes the adoption of solar and storage and reduces Community Power's resource adequacy obligations. Both those items are related to what we're launching as well, the Distributed Energy Resource Management System, or DERMS platform. And this is really the cornerstone of our flexible load strategy. The simplest way to think about our flexible load strategy is that it makes it easier for customers to use electricity when it doesn't cost as much, and shifting their consumption off of our peak. That also, not only does it reduce that customer's electricity bill, it can help reduce the cost of power for us as an agency, which that trickles down to lower rates for everyone. It's done right. We want to mention the Solar Advantage program. It was mentioned earlier, but it's a really important program. It warrants mentioning again. It is run through a Public Utilities Commission funding, and it will provide bill discounts of 20%, nearly 10,000 low-income customers. These are Care/Fair customers, so they're already receiving a 30% discount. They'll receive an additional 20 on top of that, so 50% rate discount. And we're doing all of this with about half of our positions being funded externally through grants like the REN, the Equitable Building Decarbonization Program funding position, and the Solar Advantage program funding position, with those positions not impacting the CIP or our operating budget. And with that, pass it to Ron.
Good evening, members of the CAC. I'm Jen LeBron, Director of Public Affairs here at Community Power. So our department connects Community Power with the people and communities it serves while supporting all of the departments that you've heard from today. Through strategic communications, local partnerships, and public engagement, the team builds awareness of Community Power's mission, programs, and benefits. Together, the marketing, communications, strategic partnerships, and community engagement divisions of the public affairs team foster Community Power's connections with key audiences, enhance brand identity, and ensure transparency through outreach, media engagement, and public education. Our job is to make sure customers and internal staff have the tools they need to understand Community Power's mission and the rates and programs they can use to become more sustainable and save money. All these efforts and investments fall under the marketing and outreach category in the budget. Our budget highlights include scaling back on printing costs and moving to digital to get cost savings of hundreds of thousands of dollars year over year. We're also seeking to add a strategic communications associate to assist with earned media and develop more cohesive messaging across programs and services in the coming year. We also will be utilizing the power network of community-based organizations to build trust in neighborhoods and work directly with organizations that can help spread the word about programs and projects and help with a variety of other tasks here at Community Power. And while not reflected in the marketing and outreach section of the budget specifically, we are using external funding through programs like San Diego REN to significantly increase targeted strategic communications and outreach to encourage program participation and increase awareness across the board. All of these efforts for communications, marketing, partnerships, and outreach is done with the goal of providing our customers with accurate, helpful information from a brand that they've seen partner with community stalwarts from local nonprofits to our local sports teams. We want our customers and stakeholders to be familiar with who we are as we roll out these programs, so they know that we're a legitimate public agency that truly is here to help them save energy and money. With that, I'm turning it back to Dr. Eric Wash.
And again, good evening, Community Advisory Committee members, and thank you to all of our staff for walking through the details of what we're proposing for our fiscal year 2026 budget. What you just heard reflects the expertise our staff, the expertise of our staff and the values that we've committed to. And these values drive our decision-making process. For our fiscal year 2026 proposed budget, it is more than just a financial plan. It is a roadmap or a blueprint for building clean, equitable, and resilient energy future for communities that we serve. And our communities are quite deserving of those efforts. This budget balances long-term fiscal discipline with near-term action. It continues our commitment to affordability, equitable programs, and organizational excellence. From strategic energy procurement to program design and community outreach, every dollar in this budget is intentionally directed to maximize value for our customers and ensure the sustainability of our operation. As we move forward, we remain committed to listening to our customers, learning from our partners, and delivering on the promises of community power, not just as a utility, but as a force of good throughout our entire region. So thank you all for your attention tonight, and thanks again to the staff for the presentation and walking through the highlights of our fiscal 26 budget. And now we're happy to answer any questions or take any comments that you might have. Thank you.
And before that, Sandra, do we have any public comments? No items, so then we'll turn it over to the committee members if they have comments or questions. Committee Member Johns.
I have two questions, hopefully very brief as far as necessary answer. Jack, on the enterprise-wide data platform, are we developing that in-house? Or is that like a contract to I'll say a software developer for lack of?
We went through an RFP process for that. We selected a developer and we're working with that developer, and we're combining both in-house service expertise. So some of our staff will be working on it once it's developed.
Sure.
But we're also using some outside consultants to cut costs.
Sort of an open-ended follow-up, but does this developer have experience with other CCAs, other utilities as far as this platform?
They definitely have experience with other entities. I'm not sure if they've worked with other CCAs before. I'm not sure if no one else. The EDP. Like I mentioned, we went through an RFP process. I'm not sure if we can get back to you on whether or not they've worked with other CCAs before.
I'm just trying to get a picture.
Yeah.
My second question is for Colin. On the solar battery savings program, even though I will be gone from the CAC, I do want to follow the progress because many people know it's kind of my favorite thing here. And I'm just wondering when there will be a report of the program performance data next to the CAC.
We're hoping to relaunch the program in Q3, towards the end of Q3. So we likely won't have performance data, so like numbers of applications and projects, location of projects. I wouldn't expect we would have that for at least 3 to 6 months into the program.
Well, I'm actually asking about from the first round.
Oh, the pilot project.
Follow, in other words,
I believe the pilot project was brought to the CAC in January. It was brought to the board and the CAC in January, where we summarized pilot project activities.
Well, I guess I was hoping to see I've asked questions before about, you know, have there been any issues about, for instance, my main concern is that there's so many contractors out there. And it seems to me that there could be vast differences in how they scale a project for any given customer. And if they scale it too small, that customer will experience, you know, months where they're not compensated by the performance incentive. And so I mentioned this before, that I was looking forward to, you know, a 1 year through summer and winter of the pilot project. I'm just wondering, is that possible?
Absolutely, we can report back. We have probably a quarter of data right now from the pilot participants. Because even though it ran last summer, batteries are being installed November, December. So we're about a quarter, maybe a quarter and a half into actual participation from the first round. We weren't anticipating to report out on the participation, but I will say to your question about sizing systems incorrectly, we provided contractors with a system sizing tool to avoid this very thing. The last thing we want to do as an agency is get in a situation where we're providing this incentive that has requirements, and part of those requirements are they need to perform and discharge their battery on a certain schedule. And if they don't, there are provisions in the program that require them to pay back the incentive. That's not a situation we want to get into. So we try to set everything up from the get-go so that we can set contractors and participants up to have a system that can perform for 5 years or 10 years, which is what the performance incentive covers. So we haven't had the number of customers unenrolled out of that 1,600. You can count on one hand. A very low number of folks who have unenrolled. We definitely had hiccups with the pilot with some contractors, some systems that could be expected with the pilot. We've got some nice lessons learned. We've incorporated into the program. When the program launches, we expect to bring an update on the program that will highlight the changes from the pilot to both the CAC and the board. And we can talk about some of the performance issues that you're mentioning, or the changes in performance requirements, and that might address some of the questions that you have.
Okay, I'm just going to put the placeholder there. Specific data I would like to see as a interested member of the public after this month is data on across. I'm expecting some kind of bell curve based on customers that have experienced 1 month of no performance incentive, 2 months of no performance incentive, 3 months of no performance incentive.
Yeah, I think after 12 months of having all the batteries in the program, we could have a better picture in the pilot, we have a better picture of what the performance would look like.
Yes.
We would need all the batteries installed. We still have some pilot batteries that are yet to be installed. So we'd be probably 12 months from now before we have that full 12-month picture that we'd be able to share with the CAC board.
Okay.
All right.
Committee member Subner had his hands up first, and
Yeah, real quick, thank you. One quick question on the ERP that was selected what is that, and how long is that implementation, and what does that cost roughly? So Mr. Tim?
Yeah, Tim Magnamot can respond to that. So Tim, if you want to respond to that. So
could you repeat the question? And I couldn't quite.
The ERP software that was selected.
ERP.
Select, and how long is implementation roughly, in order of magnitude cost?
So to clarify, committee member Sumner, that project is sort of in the development phase.
Okay.
It is an enterprise resource planning tool. I'll stop there and I'll let Tim give some.
Yeah, Eric's exactly right. Yeah, so it's a budget request for this year. So we haven't actually started it yet. We're doing some scoping right now. Our hope is to issue an RFP here in the short term. And then from the RFP, we should get a lot more information in terms of the cost. The cost can range depending on the organization. Like the big organizations like the City of San Diego, for example, will have way more in their budget as opposed to community power. I mean, we're big, we're just not that big, right? So then I think, at least my hope, at least as a finance person, is we don't have to pay as much of the bigger organizations. Where I used to work at the city and county of San Francisco, when they did their ERP rollout, I think it cost them in the millions. it shouldn't cost us in the millions. It'll probably cost us in the hundreds of thousands, small hundreds of thousands, but we won't know until we do the formal RFP and we get some bids.
That's great. I mean, I've been through many ERP implementations and they can get very expensive if the requirements gathering is done right. So I'm really glad to hear you're spending the time up front doing the requirements gathering now and not necessarily buying something just because it's the biggest and best out there, but the best for community power.
Exactly, and that's a great point that you raised, Committee Member Sumner. And as stated throughout the presentations tonight, we're focused on efficiency, and efficiency breeds savings, savings breed affordability. So we want to make sure that we're methodical and really thoughtful, thoroughly thoughtful in terms of which platform, which software, which ERP we actually select to customize to fit our needs, as opposed to just buying something off the shelf.
Thank you for that. That is it.
Committee Member Anderson, yes.
Two questions. One's a follow-up to Gary's. So you've hired a developer to implement this new unified data system. I'm not sure what you call it. But
EDP, Enterprise Data Platform.
are you hiring people to add to your staff internally to help manage that once it's up and running?
We've hired that staff already. They're instrumental in helping the developer get this all done. But to your point, to the root of your point, we are actually evaluating when and where to hire internal staff, how long we need them for. This is a development phase. So we chose that we didn't need to add additional staff above and beyond what we already have over the long term. So we're using consulting services to help us scale that. And we do that periodically throughout other teams and departments and efforts as well.
Thank you. All right. Second question is, and I'm not sure who this is directed to, but one of the speakers alluded to what I'll call a pass-through energy procurement contract from SDG&E. In other words, they had some long-term contracts. Now you're taking those over and they're indexed and we're purchasing them. I have two questions regarding those. One is how long do we anticipate continuing with that process, and what percentage of our portfolio constitute those pass-throughs?
Janine, so you want to try to give that a crack?
Well, thank you for the question. Can you repeat the first one?
Well, the first part of that question is those pass-throughs, you're acquiring power from SDG&E based on their prior contracts. Okay, and those are indexed as they well should be. And so it's two parts. I don't care which one we take it in order, but what percentage of our portfolio uses that process to acquire power? Approximately.
And that one, I'm a little less sure. I can definitely get back to you. Andrea would likely know that, so I can come back with the answer. I don't really want to guess, but
okay,
it's
an estimate would be fine, but if you want to give me a more precise answer, that's great. And then for what period of time are those contracts? Are those 1 or 2 year contracts, or do they last? Some last 5 and 10 years.
well, so right now, it's a long-term contract. So I believe I don't know the exact dates either, but I want to say in the 2030 range, and we're working on extending it.
Yeah, if you can get back to me on those two,
Definitely.
that'd be great.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the committee members?
Yeah, I wanted
Member Harris.
Jen, about earned media opportunities. Could you expand just a little bit on what those opportunities are and what exactly earned media?
Sure thing, no problem. So earned media is typically what you call getting on the news. So there are two types of media, paid media and earned. Paid is where you're paying for advertisements, like things like billboards. Earned media is when somebody asks if you'd like to go on their morning show or their radio show, or we're doing a press conference. It's free aside from staff time that it takes to get that media attention. And so by bringing on a communications associate, we have more opportunities to do things like press announcements or all of the programs that we know are going to be rolling out over the next 12 months.
Great. I noticed there was an earned media in the Union Tribune about our power resources and that, you know, I think that kind of exposure really puts us in the conversation of San Diegans. They understand that there's more than just SDG&E out there looking out for the consumers of San Diego, the energy consumer.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. And then I just had one comment on, you know, we get introduced to new staff almost every meeting, and it seems like now we've reached how many staff in the organization?
Over 80.
Over 80 staff, and it just feels really good at this 5-year mark to 5 going on 6 to, you know, be at this point where we have attracted some really great talent to this organization. And, you know, it seems like staff retention is good. And I just, you know, think that part of the budget is so important to make sure that we continue to be an organization of excellent people who are pursuing common goals. And it just feels really good. I just wanted to say that. And thank you, Dr. Washington and Jack Clark, for your leadership in those areas.
It's all them.
And everyone. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I have a few, if there's none other from the committee members. So the solar and battery savings, when you use the term savings, that's for the customer savings? Is there any savings for San Diego Community Power?
Yes, the program I mentioned about resource adequacy savings. And so try to keep it as high level as possible. We have a resource. If we aggregate all the batteries that are behind the meter that we've incentivized, we kind of plan for that discharge every day. And in our load forecast to go to the state, we plan for that reduction of load. And those load forecasts to go to the state, that's what our RA obligations are based on. So if we can plan to have 10 megawatts or 20, or we're aiming for 45 megawatts in this program, for the single family program, yeah, that reduces RA obligations in the future.
Okay. And then kind of related to that, when you did that project last year, the funds went very quickly and was a lot of contractors got on board. And I thought that the next year's implementation was going to be a smaller dollar amount, but you said it's going to be double, 18.8 million? Is that, did I understand that right?
You did, but I was not referring to the incentive levels. I was referring to the entirety of the budget that we're asking for next fiscal year. So we haven't finalized the incentive levels yet. We have had a meeting with contractors who have shown interest in the program. We've gotten feedback from industry. We likely will lower the incentive levels on a per project basis, but the entirety of the budget we're asking for is larger.
It's larger, but the incentive for the customers might be a little bit less.
We're considering reducing the upfront incentive, the performance incentive. We're not considering changing it all.
I see. And then a lot of these efforts you're working on are, I heard, funded by grants. And I know the state is going through a budget challenge. Will any of the state's challenges affect these grants that are in these programs?
I said grants, but I was probably using that term a little bit too loosely. They're all funded by external parties, external state agencies, and the grants that I mentioned. So the rural building decarbonization grant, that money has been allocated and is in the hands of the recipient of that, which is LA County, and so that money will be spent. Same thing with efficient refrigeration pilot. That was a grant we won from the California Department of Food and Agriculture. That is money that's been allocated. So the external funding that we have that's been allocated, we're not concerned about any changes in the state budget. Anything could happen, but we're not worried about that. It impacts our ability to bring in additional dollars or expand the programs we have if we're relying on state monies. But to answer your question, we're not worried about what's in our budget right now.
And if I can go back to the solar battery savings project, did you find that the implementation of that, and I think I made these comments before, it used to be everything should be south facing as far as the solar panels are. Did you find that they were implementing these where there are some panels on the east or west so that they could charge the battery at different times?
That is a detail that I do not have the answer to for you now.
I would be highly interested in what happened last time and then see how you might guide the contractors for the next implementation.
We, I don't believe, collect the direction that the solar panels are facing in the data we're collecting. It's typically product information, so the size of the system, like battery size, inverter, like manufacturer type information. I don't believe we collect the direction of the solar, but we can look into that if we.
I think that would be good to keep track of that in some form or another, because 5 years ago when I had the solar installed, mostly south facing, but a good percent east facing. So in the mornings when it's not like June and May, I was getting production and the batteries was being charged up faster, so it'd be usable at night and all during the night. So I think that's something that should be considered when they implement these programs. Okay, is there any other comments? So this, that was a lot of work from the staff. We appreciate it, your efforts. And keep up the good work, keep us informed. Very many challenges ahead, but it's very exciting to hear moving forward on these issues and programs. So this is a file and receive. I think no further action is needed. Thank you very much. Okay. I think we jumped over item 9 already. And now I'm lost what to do next.
Look at your screen there. Look at this.
Look at the screen. Okay. Well, I see that discussion of potential agenda items. Okay. Do any of the committee members have some discussion items that they want the board to be considering for future board meetings? Then we can move into comments from CSE members. Is something going on in the community or things they want to share? And I again want to thank Gary for his service all this time. And you had a lot of good questions, and I'm sure they're going to give you some more information in the future on your interests.
I would just add that it's been a pleasure to serve with you on this committee, and we work together on many of the committees, and your contribution to this has been very valuable. So thank you for your service.
Well, thank you very much.
And I would just share, I think I told you in the previous meeting that I had got a heat pump water heater installed. And I learned a little bit. Okay, what am I going to do here? Oh, okay. That's important to know. I'll get to that in a moment with this. Thank you. Just to share experience, on the heat pump water heaters, in my case, it was an urgent thing. I had to get it done right away. I had to pay a good chunk of money, but in my calculation, in 10 years, it'll be paid back. And that heat pump water is supposed to last at least 10 years. So it'll be a lot cheaper to put in the next version because I've got the electrical and everything set up for the location. But my brother, who planned ahead a little bit better out in Hamul, there they use propane, which is more expensive than natural gas. And he planned ahead. He bought the unit himself when it was at a discount, put it in his garage, planned all the electrical, he read the specs, he did the work himself. So the labor and the planning and bought some extra electrical parts to put it all together, and he and his son implemented it within one day once they were ready. In his case, because he planned ahead and he did a lot of the work himself, he calculated that there's 30% tax credit, even if it's only on the equipment itself, but he can't charge his labor. And the amount that he was going to save, because the propane was a lot more expensive the payback on the cost would be done in 2 years, the way he implemented it. So if you plan ahead, those kind of things, it can be cheaper and your payback would be a lot faster. So just FYI. And so then the other important notice, now I lost the page, but I think the important notice is we have a meeting in June. But is anybody planning to come in July? Because there's not going to be a meeting. Okay. So no meeting in July, but August, we'll be having a meeting. And thanks for everybody's participation tonight. Enjoy July. And look forward to seeing what's happening by the time we come back in August. That's all the meaning to
Thank you, Lord.
adjourn.
Thanks.
Thank you.